Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bobby Valentine Sports Show. I'm your host, Frank Rampin, as always, back at the home studio setup right now. Got some action. This right here, a little bit unfortunate. We're not going to go into that, but got the basketball on the table because we're breaking down the first weekend of March Madness. Let's get right into it. What a first weekend it was. Round of 64 and 32 happened this past week, Thursday through Sunday. What a first weekend in the NCAA Tournament. And let's just go right into the bracket breakdown. All right. So the first round, start in the West, as that was the first game to tip off. Michigan State took down number 8 Mississippi State to open the tournament. It was a pretty good game for the start of it, but Michigan State ended up winning that game pretty handedly. Tom Izzo getting things done in March like normal. Arizona, they beat Long Beach State in the last game coached by the Long Beach State head coach. He was actually not an employee of the school heading into that game, so nothing surprising so far. UNC, they took down Wagner, the 116 matchup. Not a very good game there. Number 10, Nevada. They were up 17 points with 6 minutes left to go in this one. Blew it to Dayton. Dayton wins, moved on to the second round. Ridiculous collapse by Nevada. I had them going kind of far in a few of my brackets. Brutal loss from them, and honestly, a brutal opening round from the Mountain West. We'll keep going for it. Baylor, they beat Colgate very handedly. Not a very good game there. And Clemson, they beat number 11, New Mexico. And every single person had New Mexico, another one of those Mountain West teams, going extremely far. I had them going to the Sweet 16 and losing, but, I mean, a lot of people had them going to the Elite Eight, Final Four. Maybe not the championship game, but some people had them going to the Final Four. Mountain West 0 for 2 so far as we look through this. Alabama, they took down Charleston. Alabama high scored in offense. Grand Canyon, the number 12 seed, our first 12-5 upset. They beat St. Mary's for their first ever tournament win in school history. And shout out to, what's his name? I got to find his name. Hold on. Excuse me. This has to happen because shout out to I need to do it. Basketball player. He went through 2 open heart surgeries, came back, and led the team in scoring for the first 2 games. They win their first ever tournament game. And, I mean, it was unreal story. He hadn't played basketball in 2 years. It's Tyon Grant Foster, the senior from Kansas City. Unbelievable story. He led them for their first ever tournament win against St. Mary's. Unbelievable for him after 2 open heart surgeries. Now move to the East. The first upset. This was the second game of day 1. The Duquesne Dukes, the 11 seed, took down number 6 BYU, who BYU, one of the best three-point shooting teams in the country coming into the tournament. A team that a lot of people were a little bit worried about, especially with their three-point shooting. Like, they could take down. They played Iowa State tough in both the games they played against them in the Big 12. Iowa State was a 2 seed in that same region. So, I mean, crazy. It's the first tournament win for Duquesne since 1969. 20,095 days. That's the third longest gap between wins in NCAA tournament history. Unreal, only behind Holy Cross, which is number 1, and I can't remember number 2, but Holy Cross has the longest streak ever. Number 3, Illinois. They took down Morehead State. Marcus Damask. 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 11 assists. So the first triple-double recorded in the NCAA tournament since Ja Morant back in 2019 for Murray State. Number 2, Iowa State. They took care of number 15, South Dakota State, pretty handedly. Number 7, Washington State. They beat Drake. They had a push late in that game. It was close, but then they missed their last 4. Maybe they went 1 for their last 5, Drake did, and that was it. Northwestern, they beat FAU in overtime in a great game. Marcus Langford for Northwestern made a unbelievable scoop layup to tie it up right before the buzzer. John L. Davis missed the 3 at the buzzer for FAU, went into overtime, and it was all Northwestern. San Diego State, they narrowly escaped an upset of UAB by 4 points. Close game by them. They didn't play their best ball. UConn, they played the 16 seed sets, and they won by 40. Number 13, Yale. They beat number 4 Auburn by 2, 78-76. Crazy finish to that one. Second ever tournament win in school history for Yale, and it was the first ever first-round exit for the Auburn Tigers. And that game was wild. Auburn, they were up by 10 at one point with about 7 minutes left to go in the second half. I always want to say fourth quarter, but college basketball is 1 half, second half. They had a chance, right? So they were up by 10 with about 6 minutes to go. Huge comeback from the Bulldogs of Yale. And then late in this one, Yale actually had the lead. Foul by the Bulldogs. Tigers had a chance to tie it at the line, but he missed both the free throws. But Auburn got the offensive board, blocked twice in the lane, and then kick out three for the win, misses. So that was a wild finish. That wraps up the East. The Midwest region, number 3, Creighton, they took down number 14, Akron, very handily. Number 11, Oregon, took down number 6, South Carolina. This was a great game. Jermaine Couisnard, if you don't know that name, you learned of him last weekend. Transferred from South Carolina to Oregon. So he playing for Oregon now, playing against his former team. Dropped 40 points on him. 40 points on the head of his old team. Most points in an NCAA tournament game since Carson Edwards back in 2019 in that unreal Elite 8 game against Virginia where he hit 10 threes. We're going to talk a little bit more about him later. You might know why. He's the last player to have 38 or more points for a double-digit seed was Steph Curry back in 2008. So Jermaine Couisnard coming into Steph Curry range, joining him. He dropped 40 in this one. They moved on. Pac-12 players. This is the history of the NCAA tournament, right? Pac-12 players to have a 40-point game ever in the tournament. Bob Harbreggs had 2 in 1953 for Washington. Gail Goodrich had 2 for UCLA in 1965. Bill Walton had 1 in 1973 for UCLA. And Jermaine Couisnard this past week for Oregon. Just the fourth player ever to have a 40-point game from the Pac-12 in the NCAA tournament. Unbelievable. Texas, they killed Colorado State. The Mountain West misery continues. Gonzaga, they took down McNeese. A lot of people had McNeese beating Gonzaga in this one, but Gonzaga took them down by about 25 points. Tennessee, they beat St. Peter's, the Cinderella from a few years ago. They don't have any of their players or their coach from that time, so it just wasn't meant to be. Rick Barnes, the head coach of Tennessee, head coaching in his 28th NCAA tournament, tied for the 4th most all-time with Bob Knight. The only coaches he's behind is Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski, Jim Boeheim, and then Roy Williams. So elite company for Rick Barnes, and he's still alive. Number 4, Kansas, narrowly. And when I say narrowly, I mean by the skin of their teeth. Kansas escaped number 13, Stanford. And I was talking about this one in previous podcasts saying I'm going to pick Stanford. I think Stanford's going to win. They play a crazy fast-paced style where they full court press the whole game. They shoot pretty good, and there's 13 players on the team or 10 players on the team that get 13 minutes a game. It worked out great. At one point in the game, late in the second half, Stanford was down by 22 points. They came on a wild comeback, cutting it all the way down within like 8 points. It was 81-84. Stanford hit a big 3 to cut it down to 4 points. They force a turnover, get the ball back, run this insane double roundabout to the corner 3, make it a 1-point game with 15 seconds left. And they run the press. So immediately they make that 3 and they're on the line pressuring. They get the ball into DeJuan Harris, and he chucks it down the court to Timberlake. I forget his first name. I always want to say Justin, but obviously it's not Justin. Up to Timberlake, and instead of just kind of running out the clock and getting fouled, which he probably should have done, he goes up to throw one down. And the second best block that I've ever seen in my life live happened in that game. This kid, don't even know who he was, I'm sorry, went up and swatted this dude, Timberlake, off the glass. And it was one of the most athletic plays I've ever seen. Perfectly got all ball, just boom, right in between his 2 hands as he was going up for the dunk, off the glass, and his body, he weaved him. He didn't make contact with one singular part of Timberlake's body. What a block. It was the second best block. The first one, you might be thinking, Game 7, LeBron in the finals. That's number 1. This was number 2. Blocks that I've seen in live watching my TV. Not in person. I wasn't there, but you know what I'm saying. And they took it away. Blocked off the glass. Stanford had the board. They were going to go down with 12 seconds left. They had a chance to win. Down by 1 with the ball, 12 seconds. They call the foul. They nail both the free throws, and they narrowly escape. God, that was a heartbreaker for me because I kept telling everyone that Kansas was going to lose, and they should have. Oh, but what a game. Number 1, Purdue. They broke the curse of the first round by beating number 16, Grambling. Zach Edey had 30 points and 21 rebounds. Second player with a 30-plus point, 20-plus point rebound game. Or, well, what did I just say? Second player with a 30-plus point, 20-plus rebound game since 1976. He joins Joe Smith, who did it back for Maryland in 95. And finally, a Mountain West team gets a win as Utah State takes down number 9, TCU. So, that wraps up the Midwest, and we'll go to the South now. Number 14, Oakland took down Kentucky, 80-76. Jack Golke, this year's man of the tournament, 32 points on 10 of 20 shooting, all of those from 3. tied for the second most made threes in a single NCAA tournament game. What a game this was. I was watching this with one of my roommates, Sean. I'm sorry about this, brother. He's a Kentucky fan. This kid, Jack Golke, I don't know who said this. I want to say who said it because it might have been Titus from Barstool. I don't even know. But he was saying that when somebody's doing something special, it is when you see what they're doing and it just makes you laugh. By the time this guy had like 5, 6, 7 threes in the first half, and the way he was taking them, like off balance on the run, everything fading, and it was just like, I couldn't help but laugh. It was unreal what I was seeing. You went 7 from 13 from 3 in the first half. It was unbelievable. I have never seen anything like it in my life. And the second half, they were face guarding him way more. Antonio Reeves was kind of all over him in the second half. But, he still was just getting to his spot, taking contested fadeaways in people's faces and just eye hole. Nothing but net. It was unreal. I've never seen anything like it. 10 from 20 from 3, tied for the second most threes ever behind Jeff Fryer, who had 11 back in 1990 for LMU. But he was tied with Carson Edwards, Robert Saleh, and Fred Banks, all with 10. Unbelievable shooting night from Jack Golke. And this guy doesn't take twos. We learned that from all the coverage we got on this guy after this happened, because this was the Cinderella guy of the tournament. This was this year's equivalent to Jimmer, Doug Eddard, all these guys. Like, this was it. He doesn't take twos. So on the season, 347 attempted three-pointers for Jack Golke, 8 twos. 8 twos. So this guy just waits for those double screens, runs across the court, and just takes a freaking bomb fader every time for the entire season. But, I guess it works. You took down Kentucky. Unbelievable. Number 11, NC State. They continue their Cinderella run. They take down Texas Tech in the first round. The DJs absolutely killing it. DJ Horn and DJ Burns, the hefty lefty. Unreal. The hefty lefty 2.0. Come on. The basketball one. Marquette, they beat number 15, Western Kentucky. It was a close game at halftime, but Marquette came out blistering in the second half. Colorado took down Florida in the first game, 102-100. First time that both teams scored over 100 points in an NCAA tournament game since 2005. And the way that Colorado won, off of an insane buzzer-beating shot in the corner that took a Kawhi bounce, hit every single part of the rim, and dropped down. It was basically identical to that Kawhi play, maybe a little bit of a push-off from KJ Simpson, maybe. I wouldn't be happy if I was a Florida fan, but nevertheless, what a moment. And, of course, Kevin Harlan on the call for both the Kawhi bounce shot and the KJ Simpson bounce shot, and it was identical calls. Kevin Harlan's the man. Ridiculous. 5 players for Colorado scored at least 10 points in that game, and it's the second time that they did that in a tournament game in the history of their program. Texas A&M killed Nebraska. Duke beat Vermont pretty handedly. Houston killed the number 16 seed Longwood. JMU, the Dukes, they took down number 5 Wisconsin. And that was the last 12-5 upset. So in the first round, there were 11 lower seeds to move on. But 17 games in the first round were decided by 15-plus points, most ever in a round of 64. So, it was either going to be a really good game, like that Colorado-Florida game, or it was going to be a brutal game, like any game the one seeds play. 8 wins by double-digit seeds in the first round. There was only 5 last year, so that's pretty good. So I'll move on to the second round. The West region, number 2 Arizona, they pretty handedly took down Dayton. Dayton had a couple runs in the second half, but Arizona led that game wire to wire. UNC beat number 9 Michigan State. Tom Izzo cannot beat UNC in the tournament. 0-6 now, I believe. Maybe it's 0-7. And UNC moves on to its 31st Sweet 16 appearance, the most all-time by any school. I almost said franchise there. Clemson, they took down Baylor, the first and only underdog to win in the second round by the spread. Took down Baylor. Clemson, first NCAA tournament win over a top 3 seed for them since 1980. And Chase Hunter, consecutive 20-point games for the first time this season. So good time to have your first 2 or back-to-back 20-point games for the first time, 2 tournament games, leading Clemson to their first Sweet 16 in 8 years, I believe. Unless my math is off. Number 4, Alabama beat Grand Canyon. And if you didn't watch this game, it was one of the wildest, most fast-paced, sloppiest, insane basketball games that I've ever witnessed in my entire life. Because if you've seen any Alabama basketball this year, you know they just like to run the score up, run up and down the court as quick as humanly possible, just sprinting back and forth. That's like, it's unreal to keep up with them. But Grand Canyon decided in this game, we're going to try to beat their pace, you know? We're just going to not even try to keep up with them. We're going to try to overmatch them. And it was something to behold. It was just like sprinting back and forth, run back and forth, pass out of bounds, turnover, 2 guys on the ground diving for it, 2 guys over here, off the backboard, miss, 3, made the shot, inbound, sprint down the court. It was something to behold. It was actually a track meet. I've never seen anything like it before in my life. And Alabama ended up winning the game by about 8 points. It was real close for the entire game. Grand Canyon went cold in the last 4 minutes, couldn't hit a shot. So Alabama advanced to the Sweet 16 back-to-back times for the first time since 1991. So that's going to wrap up the West region, heading over to the Midwest, first game that we saw in this region. Number 5 taking down number 4, Gonzaga. This is one of 2 lower seeds to win in this game, but Gonzaga was favored over Kansas because Kansas is so injury depleted. 9 straight Sweet 16 appearances for Gonzaga. That's tied for the second longest streak of all time. Tied with Duke for their longest streak of all time, and only behind UNC. They had 13. Think about that. Gonzaga's relatively new onto this scene for blue bloods, right? UNC and Duke are arguably the bluest of the bloods. And I mean UConn, come on, the boys. But, I mean, 9 consecutive Sweet 16s is unreal. This was a great game, too, in the first half. And then Gonzaga, something happened at halftime. Mark Few, I guess, lit a fire up under them. And they just came out absolutely smoking in the second half. It was unreal. Tennessee, they beat number 7 Texas by 4. This was a pretty close game going down the stretch, but Tennessee able to come out with it. Number 3, Creighton. They took down number 11, Oregon, in a wild game. 86-73 in double overtime. This game was wild. Oregon was kind of in control of this game for most of the time, but no one else could score except for Jermaine Kuznar and Indante. It was unbelievable. They could not score. They had, how many points did they score? 73. I'm pretty sure those 2 players had 65 of those 73 points. Like, it was actually unbelievable. They couldn't have anyone to score, but they had them in regulation. Baylor Shireman hit this clutch fadeaway on 1 foot to send it into overtime. Not at the buzzer, but with like 4 seconds left. They were unable to hit a buzzer beater. Jermaine Kuznar came down, missed a runner, kind of going down the baseline. And then in overtime, the Blue Jays had it won. Creighton did, and Jermaine Kuznar hit this wild 3 with like 8 seconds left to tie it up. Blue Jays didn't score, double overtime, and then in double overtime, they took it. Unbelievable game. Jermaine Kuznar passes Lou Alcindor, which is a.k.a. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if you are unaware, for the most points through the first 2 games of a NCAA tournament in Pac-12 history. Unbelievable tournament for Jermaine Kuznar, even though it was only 2 games. But I mean, that Oregon team, if they were just a little bit more well-rounded, they would still be dancing. They really would be. Moving on. The number 1 seed in the Midwest, Purdue, they killed Utah State by 40. And fun fact, I took Utah State in this game. So yeah, if you watched it, I mean, for the first 8 minutes, they were like, oh man, this might be it. This might be the game. And then, no. Absolutely not. Purdue won by 40. And in both of the tournament games so far, Zach Edey has had a double-double in the first half, before halftime. So that shows you how it's been going. And so in the history of the NCAA tournament, right, there have been 2 players to have 50 points, 35 rebounds on 65% shooting through the first 2 games in the NCAA tournament. I'm sure you could guess the first one. I mean, we're talking about Purdue. Zach Edey, right now, is one of them. So the last person to ever do this, we just talked about him again, Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, back in 1968. So that season for Lou Alcindor in 1968, in those first 2 games in the NCAA tournament, he had 50 points, 41 boards on 71.4% field goal percentage. He ended up winning the national championship. Zach Edey, this year, 2024, 53 points, 3 more points than him, 35 boards, 6 less rebounds, on 67.9% field goal percentage. Question mark on that national title so far. Obviously, he's not We're not there yet, but pretty damn good start for Zach Edey. I mean, even when they've lost early in the tournament and in games, it's not really his fault. I mean, because you can't stop him. He's 7'4". He's going to score. He's going to get boards. I mean, you can force others to beat you, and that's how Purdue loses. So that's going to move on to the East region. The number 2 Iowa State Cyclones, they took down number 7 Washington State to move on to the Sweet 16. Illinois, they killed Duquesne. First Sweet 16 appearance since 2005 for the Fighting Illini. That ends the Cinderella story for the Dukes. UConn, they killed Northwestern by 30. And the best point differential through 2 games by reigning champions in NCAA tournament history. The best one ever is 72, plus 72 by the 1998 Arizona Wildcats. Number 2 is plus 61 points by the 1966 LaSalle. And then 56 right now, plus 56 overall for the first 2 games for the UConn Huskies. So pretty elite company for the Huskies right now. Need to keep it going into the second weekend as they go to Boston to take on the San Diego State Aztecs. Speaking of them, they killed Yale, number 13, and that's going to set up a national championship rematch from last season in the Sweet 16. Wow. That's going to be pretty entertaining. This UConn team, tough though. They got 5 guys that can drop 20, 25 on you any night. All 5 of those starters are a force to be reckoned with, in my opinion. But Ledee on San Diego, he is as well. So the South now, number 11, NC State. They took down the Cinderella of the whole tournament. But, I mean, NC State in their own right, a Cinderella. They took down Jack Oakley in Oakland in overtime. This was a great game. Tied up with about 5-7 seconds left to go in the second half. Oakland had the ball and a chance. They had to go to Townsend, their best player, the Horizon League Player of the Year. He had been going nuts, especially after Golke goes off in the first game. Like, you have to face guard him in the second game, So NC State did that the entire time, but that opens up Townsend down low, and he just had an unbelievable game. So Oakland has a chance to win it at the buzzer, giving it to their big man. But good defense from NC State, forcing it to someone that they didn't want to have the ball in the hands. Oakland, the Golden Grizzlies, and turnover. Actually almost had a chance for NC State to win it. Full court or 3-quarter court heave. I believe it was by Michael O'Connell. Almost went in off the backboard. But overtime we go. 6-point win, 79-73 for the Wolfpack. So their Cinderella story continues. Jack Golke is gone. First Sweet 16 for NC State since 2015. And the 11th seed advances to the Sweet 16, or an 11 seed, advances to the Sweet 16 for the 8th time in the last 10 tournaments. So 11 seed has been the good bet. Third Sweet 16 appearance as a double-digit seed for the Wolfpack. And that ends the tournament run of Jack Golke, this year's Cinderella man. He set the NCAA tournament record with 16 made threes in his first 2 tournament games. So, I mean, even though he didn't have another 10 3-point performance in the second game, obviously that would be insane to replicate. He still had a 6-3 game right after that with, I think, 25. So, I mean, Jack Golke really had an unbelievable shooting tournament. First 2 games were unbelievable, but, I mean, they were kind of a 2-dimensional team. Him and Townsend were really their only offensive liability. They had Rocket Watts, unbelievable name. Okay, wait, hold on. I need to touch on this. Point guards, one of them for Oakland, Rocket Watts, like that's a beautiful name. And James Madison, Fat Edwards, come on, like that's unreal college sports names. Gotta freaking love it. Marquette, they beat Colorado by 4. This was a close game. In the history of the NCAA tournament, whoa. In what? History of In the history of the NCAA tournament, players to have 18 points, 11 assists. No, what am I saying? Whoa, I'm off. I'm out of here. Wait, oh. So in the history of the NCAA tournament, there have been 3 players to have at least 18 points, 11 assists, and 5 rebounds in multiple different NCAA tournament games. First one's Oscar Robertson. He did it twice. Once in 1959, once in 1960. Magic Johnson did it in 1979. And Tyler Kolek this year. So pretty unbelievable numbers from Tyler Kolek, the point guard of the Marquette Eagles. So Kolek, 39 points, 11 boards, and 22 assists through the first 2 tournament games. He's been unbelievable. Duke beat JMU. They took down the Dukes. Duke beat Dukes. Most points by a freshman in Duke tournament history. Zion, 32, 2019. Jared McCain, 30, the other day, and then Kyrie 28 in 2011. So Jared McCain went absolutely off. 8 threes made, most by a Duke player in a March Madness game ever. And the last 5 freshmen to have 30 points and 5 boards in a tournament game, well, Jared McCain just did it this weekend. Zion, just talked about him, 2019. Tyreek Evans did it back in 2009. KD did it for Texas back in 2007. And all the way back to Carmelo Anthony in Syracuse in 2003. So pretty elite company there. All those guys besides Jared McCain, obviously, because he's a freshman still. NBA talents. Another unbelievable game here. Number 1, Houston. They beat number 9, Texas A&M. Wild game. The end of regulation, Texas A&M went on a 13-3 run in the final minute and 17. Capped off by Anderson Garcia hitting a buzzer-beating 3 at the horn. Unbelievable. We got our first actual buzzer beater of the tournament, sending this one into overtime. But Houston was able to come out on top 100-95. Jamal Shed made some clutch plays and the winning hop step lay-in. What a game that was. Houston becomes the first team to win an NCAA tournament game after 4 players fouled out since UTEP back in 1987 in the first round. So almost 40 years ago. 5 straight Sweet 16 appearances for Houston after having 0 in their previous 35 years. So the Cougars back on top, doing great. 13 of the top 16 seeds are still alive heading into the Sweet 16. So maybe not the Cinderella stories we would like to see going into the second weekend, but we still have the NC State Wolfpack, their 11 seed. Shades of the Jimmy Valvano team, to be honest, because that Jimmy Valvano team back in 1983, they had to fight to even get to the tournament. They had to win the ACC, which they did, and then they were just, that was the surviving. That was the coin phrase, survive in advance, and that's what they've been doing. But 13 of the top 16 seeds still alive. That just shows you that we have a bunch of great matchups coming up. All the best teams still alive. 4 teams have scored over 100 points in this tournament after having 0 in the last 4. So scoring way up this time. 5th time ever that all the 1 seeds and all the 2 seeds are going into the Sweet 16. 5th time ever. 11 lower seeds won in the first round. So we had a lot of upsets in the first round. You got to be happy with that. But the second round, you just saw we're going to assert our dominance and we're going to move up. Second time in the last 3 tournaments, the 11 seed went 3-1. 2 in the last 3 years, they went 3-1. So the 11 seed is the team to pick. 3-1 this year. And the SEC absolutely struggled in the first round. Kentucky and Auburn both were upset in the first round as 13.5-point favorites. SEC becomes the first conference ever to have multiple teams lose games as 13 or more point favorites in the same year. And 5 SEC teams lost in the first round of the tournament, tied for the most by any conference ever. So a brutal, brutal weekend for the SEC. And the last time that Kentucky and Kansas both missed the Sweet 16 in consecutive tournaments, 1947. 47. Oh my God. That's unbelievable. And I mentioned this already. We're getting a title game rematch in the Sweet 16. So, in the history of college basketball, before this year, there had only been 3 times that a title game rematch happened in the next tournament. Only 3 times ever. First time was in 1962 in the national championship game. So 1961 and 62, back-to-back championship games between Cincinnati and Ohio State. Cincinnati beat Ohio State in this one, 1962. 91, Duke, coming off of their win in 1990, they beat UNLV in the national championship. 2007, Florida, coming off their win in 2006, they win against UCLA in the Final Four. And now UConn is going to take on San Diego State, the Aztecs, in the Sweet 16. This will be the first time that a reigning championship matchup the next season will come earlier than the Final Four, and it'll be all the way up in the Sweet 16. So a bunch of great matchups coming up this weekend, Thursday through Sunday again. Cannot wait for the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. ACC's been running it so far. They have 8 wins, most by any conference, and they have a quarter of the Sweet 16, 4 of the 16 teams. So the ACC got a bad reputation the whole season. A lot of people talking badly about the ACC. 4 teams in the Sweet 16. So pretty impressive stuff. This weekend is going to be unbelievable. Let's look at the tournament schedule now, looking up to the weekend. Okay, here we go. Here we go. All right, so tomorrow, Thursday, the Sweet 16 kicks off at 7 o'clock. Clemson takes on Arizona. I think I'm going to take the Wildcats in this one, followed by the national championship rematch I've been talking about, San Diego State and UConn. I think the Huskies are going to take this one. They look like a complete team, both offensively and defensively. 9:30, Alabama and UNC. I think UNC is too much for them. Their defense is as good as it's ever been, to be honest. UNC is usually an offensive juggernaut. Not that they're not this year. Their defense is great. I'm going to take the Tar Heels and then Illinois, Iowa State at 10 o'clock. That could be the game of the whole entire weekend, if I'm going to be honest. And I'm honestly been leaning back and forth with this one. Two very, very opposite teams. Illinois, I mean, they like to score points. They kind of run up and down on you. Iowa State, sometimes they can't really score points. They got a great defense. I think it's ranked number 2 in the country. I think I'm going to rock with Marcus Damask and Terrence Shannon in this one and take the Fighting Illini to move on to the Elite Eight. But this is going to be a barn burner. And then Friday, we're going to see NC State Marquette. That's going to be a crazy game. I hope the hefty lefty is going to be able to do it, and I pick him to it. DJ Burns, do your thing. Who's going to guard him in the post? Oso Ighodaro, sure, but he's like a power forward. He's like a 4. DJ Burns is a 5, baby. He's going to come at you with everything he's got. I'm taking the Wolfpack to keep this historic run going. 7:30, we got Gonzaga and Purdue. Another one where I'm going to take the underdog here. I'm going to take Gonzaga and the Bulldogs. I think they're more of a complete team. Obviously, Purdue got much more complete. Lawyer and Braden Smith, they're a year older than now. They got Lance Jones. But I don't know. This Gonzaga team's been playing unreal for the past month, I think now. I'm going with the Bulldogs. Duke, Houston. I'm going to take Houston and the Cougars. They had their scare, I think, against A&M. And Jamal Shedd still willed his way to win that game, even though he fouled out along with their 3 other best players. Creighton, Tennessee. This could also be a great game. I'm going to take the Blue Jays from Creighton. I know they played shaky against Oregon, but I think I trust them a little bit more than I trust this Tennessee team. And, I mean, Dalton Connect hasn't really gone off yet. Maybe he'll show it to me this game and tell me that, hey, buddy, you're wrong. I'm going to go off right now. I think that the Blue Jays just have more scoring options. Like, they have 4 guys that can kind of take over a game. Not take over a game offensively, but they can be very effective. Where Tennessee, when Dalton Connect isn't going, they're not going. So I'm going to take the Blue Jays. Those are my predictions. And then Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have 2 games. The Elite Eight, obviously, we don't have the matchups yet. But that's going to do it for us. Don't want to show too many videos, no, because I saw ESPN. They're getting flagged for all their stuff. So no risks over here from us with the copyright infringements from CBS and the NCAA. Don't need any of that. So just had to break down everything for you, like we do here on the Bobby Valentine Sports Show. So I hope you enjoyed this one. We'll be back after the Sweet 16 in the Elite Eight. And guess what? Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We're back. We're back. I'm going to be in this same room, a little bit that way, though, if you know what I'm saying. Different background, a little bit of a different sport, if you know what I'm saying. Baseball is back as of tomorrow, Thursday, March 28th, and I could not be more excited. So, tomorrow, the 28th of March, maybe going to be my favorite day of the year. Obviously, the first day of the tournament, the Thursday and the Friday of the tournament, those are unreal days. But think about this. As a sports nerd like me, opening day of the MLB, full slate of baseball, and the Sweet 16 that night. Whoo! Are you kidding me? What a day it's going to be tomorrow, Friday. Oh, baseball season. I don't think you understand how excited I am for this. So, we'll be back with another March Madness episode. A couple more, only 2 more to go. Sweet 16, Elite 8, and then Final Four championship game. So 2 more NCAA tournament guns, and baseball is back. So we'll be back with those 2. Hopefully you enjoyed this one. Make sure to follow on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all that good stuff at the Bobby Valentine Sports Show. If you need to hit up anything about Bobby Valentine Sports Academy, at thebvacademy.com. Lessons, birthday parties, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. Peace out.